Nos dias 14, 15 e 16 de julho de 2014, aconteceu em Fortaleza a sexta cúpula dos chefes de Estado dos BRICS. Nessa oportunidade foi adotada a Declaração e o Plano de Ação de Fortaleza e, mais importante, foi criado o novo Banco de Desenvolvimento dos BRICS. Num outro lugar, distante do centro de convenções onde aconteceu a cúpula, aconteceram também os diálogos das sociedades civis sobre desenvolvimento. Chamados pelas organizações brasileiras, esses diálogos contaram com a participação de pessoas do mundo inteiro. Como parte do projeto Poderes Emergentes, Sexualidade e Direitos Humanos, o Observatório de Sexualidade Política documentou os diálogos e entrevistou ativistas, pesquisadores e pesquisadoras sobre a sua visão do fenômeno dos BRICS. E, mais importante, exploramos como as questões de gênero, sexualidade e direitos humanos se situam nesses debates. Em parceria com a Fábrica de Imagens, produzimos 8 vídeos que agora apresentamos a vocês com muito prazer.
It's a pleasure to be with you in Fortaleza, indeed.
I think possibly 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, possibly even 10 years ago, it was very much a Washington-centric focus of a lot of the work around global economic governance. There was work around the United Nations that global civil society was very, very active in, but around global economic governance questions, it was largely around a Washington-centric agenda. So
You mean
the World Bank, the IMF, to some extent the WTO, these were the arenas that captivated the energy to connect the dots between that investment and realities and protests on the ground. So I think there was a focus to say, this is where these are the bad guys in a sense, and this is where we need to put our emphasis to challenge, to try to reform. There were various aspects to that. But with the BRICS, rise of the BRICS, I think this complicates the picture completely because it's no longer, it's not a new region, as far as we know, unless there's a map we haven't seen. But it's a fascinating combination of states. And each one is a hegemonic power within each region. So as far as within each region goes, of course, each state is very much the focus of a number of neighboring states around challenging the power of India, for example, by the neighboring states, or the power of China's rise of China's military power, or Russia in the region, and so on, and South Africa as an economic power. But as a collective, I think it raises a lot of questions for civil society about what is this new power as a collective, and how do we address it? Who do we address? There's huge unevenness between them in terms of social policies, in particular, especially on the feminist agenda. Clearly, the South African constitution is very powerful. Brazilian social policies are very powerful. India, to some extent, has some strong policies. But if we look at China and Russia, it's unclear. So how do we address the BRICS as a collective when there's so much unevenness between states? And I think this is a challenge to think through. But I think it's nevertheless important geopolitically to pay attention to this new alliance, and from what I understand with the announcement of the BRICS Bank is that they want to reach out to other states as well. So they want to bring in India, Indonesia, Turkey. Is this the new South-South Bank? I mean, what is this that we're talking about, and how do feminists really think through where in this configuration of states are there the best social policies for women that we should lift as a model for the other states, and say this is the benchmark against which we will measure the policies of this consolidated bank. There are in each state tremendous challenges to the state's policies, development policies within the state. So in India, I think the greatest challenge to the development paradigm that's being pursued is coming from marginalized communities all across the country. Practically every major infrastructure project in India is being contested, and probably the only roadblocks that they have to overcome is people's movements that are resisting and are saying that this is ruining our lands, our waters, our livelihoods, etc. I mean, this is something that we're going to have to build on as part of whatever response to this new configuration. So there is a tremendous challenge from within each country. But the fact is that this development model is being exported by our countries to others. And so it can't just only be a BRICS civil society agenda. It also has to be in alliance with those who are affected by foreign policy or investment policy of these BRICS states.
Do you mean that we need to bring to these discussions the countries where the BRICS are already investing?
Yes.
And that potentially the BRICS Bank is going
will
to
deepen their
be
investments.
A major new actor in the scene.
Yes. I think these states are already major actors in certain regions and countries, in every region and country. But it will now have a home with the BRICS Bank, with a secretariat and a focus for attention.
And a place where you can target.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I raised it because I've always believed that the feminist and LGBT communities are a very powerful force, and together, a really coherent and comprehensive picture of the lives of women. If these movements can come together, and in places where they do, it's powerful. And I've seen where they have been fragmented and not come together, and it weakens the collective agenda. So I think it's very important, if we're going to engage in this BRICS process, that we bring these movements together for a collective strategizing, analysis, and so on. That's why I raised it. But I also was struck that India is the only state of all the BRICS that continues to have colonial sodomy law that criminalizes homosexuality today. I mean, it's something that I think is important for the other activists in other BRICS countries to be aware of and to strategize. I feel like we should pay attention to not only the sodomy law, but a whole range of policies that affect sexual minorities and that intersect with women's rights. There are a number of issues, transgender rights, that, as I said yesterday, we had a historic decision, Supreme Court decision in India in April that spoke to transgender rights and that recognized how the colonial laws and the continuation of those have completely been violence against transgender peoples. So I think these are important recognitions and important enshrinements of these rights. And I think a comparison across the BRICS countries of where these have advanced and where these are regressing are really important to build solidarity across countries. But I think a collective with the feminist agenda is important, and with young people who are at the forefront of resisting.
Do you know that the final BRICS declaration has one paragraph that commit the BRICS to gender equality, the rights of young people, sexual and reproductive health for all, and reproductive rights for all. What do you think about that?
It's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable that to actually recognize at least existing international agreements which speak of sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights is the minimum they shouldn't have done. And so I'm glad that they hit at least the minimum. Gender equality also, it's a phrasing that has been used for 20, 30 years? So at least 20 years since Beijing. So I think at minimum they have not regressed. But we can't stop there, no? We have to ensure that they progress from existing agreements. I should say, though, that in other international fora, like in the UN's post-2015 development agenda, even maintaining this is like a huge struggle. And the BRICS countries in that context are not necessarily defending.
They are behaving pretty
Yes,
badly.
exactly. Very slippery in terms of defending the precedent and agreed language. So I think it's important and strong that they did this, but we need to look at it comprehensively about why is sexual rights missing and how do we advance that agenda. Look, as we were discussing earlier, of the wider health context. Of it's one thing to enshrine a set of rights, but if the infrastructure is not in place to actually give people access and affordability and a way to substantiate these rights, then what does this amount to have it on paper? So I think we need to look at it within the broader political economy of the healthcare systems and to see what these states are actually doing to implement these rights.
From where do you think this language came from, considering the 5 actors sitting there? There are 4 heads of
Must be
state.
Russia, yeah. Clearly.
Putin, this is Putin's
Yeah,
agenda.
his personal agenda, of course, yes. No, I mean, it is significant that Putin and China and even Modi have signed on to this agenda. So, I'm sure it took a fair amount of negotiation to get them to do this, but I would, following the record of these 5 countries within the UN, it's quite obvious that it would be South Africa and Brazil who have spearheaded this. Yeah.
So congratulations. Even if limited.
Yes.
South Africa and Brazil. Huh?
Exactly. Yes.
But not
Yes.
enough.
But not enough.
We are grateful, but
Yes.
we want more.
We want more. We always want more. That's why we're here.
That's a good way of ending this.
Yes,
Huh?
it's true.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Anita.
you.